Hey folks, E-King here once again, and in this video, this is the two-part series to the video that we did on the Cajon shooting. And in this second part of that video, we're going to cover the laws and regulations governing the lawful use of force for bail bondsmen and bail enforcement recovery. Now, before you click off and say, oh, well, this is just for bail bondsmen or bail enforcement agents, I would challenge you to go ahead and continue to watch this video, because the laws and regulations that we're going to cover in regards to lawful use of force pertain to citizens' lawful use of force, law enforcement's lawful use of force, as well as bail enforcement's lawful use of force. So I think there's going to be a little bit of takeaway for everybody that watches this video. So let's just go ahead and get right into it. I'm going to try to keep this around 15 to 20 minutes. This is actually a full day course that is taught for bail enforcement agents, but I'm going to try to condense it down. Once again, this is live, and what I mean by that is it's unscripted. I don't ever use a script or rehearse anything. I do try to compile in bullet notes my thoughts, but it's totally unscripted. So, and not necessarily ad-libbed, but just it's not rehearsed. So kind of bear with me again with the ums and the uhs, because just talking about the elephant in the room, I do get a little nervous behind the microphone and whenever the camera's recording on me. So anyway, we'll just get right into this. As you can see on the screen here, we're laws and regulations governing the lawful use of force. Now, this is just a screenshot of my laptop here, so I'll be scrolling and finding different key points and probably pausing, and there may be some odd minutes of silence. So just again, bear with me on that, but I think the information in between those odd minutes of silence is valuable, and we'll be able to take away some things. So we're just going to get started right now. Again, the use of force. Now, where we compiled this and where this was taken was straight out of years ago, whenever I got out of the Army and got into bail enforcement and bounty hunting. I was jobless, homeless, just didn't know what to do. Somehow got into bounty hunting, realized there was other people that wanted to do it as well, and so then I started a training academy. Where I got the information for that training academy was right out of the MP training manuals. So a lot of this, I took that training manual and just adapted it and modified it to fit bail enforcement and civilian use. So that's where this source comes from, just to let you know it's not just made up from somebody's opinion. This is what's being taught for bail enforcement agents, and it is the law. Okay, so just as you can see here, for the use of force, a key rule to always remember with all arrests or restraints is use the minimum force necessary to neutralize the situation. That's the first thing that when we're teaching bounty hunters that they do. That's the first thing. That's the only thing that the only reply you are to give if ever you're in an incident when there is force used and you're being questioned by law enforcement or anybody of authority. You know, in other words, why did you do whatever you did to that individual? I use a minimum force necessary to neutralize the situation. That should be the only level of force used during any incident. So we'll talk about that just a little bit and expand on that a little bit more here. As you can see, there is a total of 5 levels of force that are used. The first and most lethal, if you will, is verbal commands. Verbal commands are directives. They are not questions. All right. As you can see here, the first and only non-physical level of force is the use of verbal commands. Although this is the least violent use of force, it's the most effective. It's the most preferred level. It would be great if we could get law enforcement to do that more, or at least from the video clips that we see. You know, we don't ever get to see how they're, the use of verbal commands. I think even if we were to see that more, it would shed a little bit different light on some of these incidences that we're seeing in the media nowadays. But the verbal commands are verbal orders. They're not to be put in the form of a question. For example, if you want a fugitive to place their hands in the air above their head, you would say, put your hands up. You don't ask them, hey, will you please put your hands up? It's put your hands up, do it now. Okay? The second level of force is your physical use of force. Okay? Physical use of force is the type of force that's most often used in conjunction with verbal commands, and it is used when verbal commands cease to be effective. The minimum force necessary to neutralize the situation is the only acceptable force that is authorized for a recovery agent to use. When using physical force, at no time should an agent administer any kind of punches, kicks, blows to the fugitive's head. Physical force may be necessary for more so as a defensive posture rather than offensive. And so what does that mean? That means, hey, you're telling this guy, hey, put your hands up, do it now. Stand, get against the car, do it now. That's your verbal commands. Well, when the verbal commands don't work, that's when you're going to have to put your hands on somebody. I think that's where the disconnect is nowadays, and that's what we're seeing on the disconnect is what we're seeing in the media nowadays, because they just skip the physical and go straight to the lethal use of force. Because why? Well, I don't know why. I always, whenever I'm training agents, though, I tell them, hey, look, if you're scared to put your hands on somebody, this probably isn't the line of work for you. If I were training law enforcement, I would tell them the same thing. If you're scared to put your hands on somebody, then this probably isn't the line of work for you. Even if that guy is bigger than you or not bigger than you. But what you do with those physical use of force is you always combine that with the verbal commands. Sorry about that. So what that means is while you're trying to restrain this guy, you're still telling them, hey, quit resisting, stop resisting, put your hands up, whatever it is that you want them to do, you need to be communicating that. That's the key word, communicating that, along with trying to physically restrain them or stop them from causing you harm. All right, so the next level of force would be baton spray, batons or pepper spray, or stun guns and dogs. So let's talk about both of those real quick. So the third level of force for authorized to agents to use is a baton and or chemical agents. These two weapons are to be used individually or in a combination with one another, and are to be the minimum force necessary to neutralize the situation. You should take extreme caution when doing this. Never should an agent use a baton in a striking or swinging manner. Again, it's mainly just to subdue and defend. You should never ever see anybody on camera swinging a baton at somebody. That's an excessive use of force as far as the scope of this video goes. In other words, in my opinion and the opinion of Ben and how we train bail enforcement and people to go out here and apprehend people. And okay, stun guns and dogs. The fourth level of force is the use of an electronic shock administrator, or better known as a stun gun, or law enforcement trained canines. All right, laws and regulations pertaining to the use of this kind of force varies from state to state, and sometimes it's even different within the same state. In other words, it varies from county to county. So if you're going to use a dog, if you are a bail enforcement agent or a bail bondsman, you want to make sure that dog is certified and trained in law enforcement work. You also want to be able to check with your insurance. A lot of insurance companies, if you have a law enforcement canine trained dog in your house, your homeowner's insurance may drop you because they consider that to be a higher risk factor. We all know in the insurance industry that the number one homeowners claim for insurance is dog bites. and the number one person filing the claim, or the number one person that gets bit by the dog, is the handler, not necessarily the owner. All right, so you in other words, what does that mean? You might have bought the puppy for little Johnny, but Johnny's dad is the one that takes the dog out, feeds the dog, walks the dog, exercises the dog, so on and so forth. Whoever handles the dog the most is eventually going to get bit. I always tell everybody, whenever my kids want a dog, or we're talking about dogs, and whenever I'm asked, can I use a dog for bounty hunting, I always let them know, if a dog has teeth, regardless of the size, sooner or later, it's not a matter of if, it's when it's going to bite. Now, the severity of the bite is a totally different topic, but eventually that dog will bite the handler. My dog Marley, you always hear me talking about Marley. You've seen questions about Marley. She hears me saying her name, so she's probably getting ready to come and pay some attention to us now. But she bites me all the time. It's not severe bites, but sometimes that's her form of communication. She doesn't always bite hard, but she does it is teeth to skin. So you just got to, if you handle dogs and work with dogs, you know what I'm talking about there. Sooner or later, you will get bit. But that is a level of force. That's the fourth level of force. Okay, so let's recap real quick. I'm going to scroll back up here. First level of force is verbal commands. Okay. Second level is physical force, and then that third level of force is batons and pepper spray. Fourth level is stun dogs or stun guns and canines and law enforcement dogs. And then the fifth level of force is the most lethal, and that's deadly force. And as you can see, these levels it increased in severity. Now, that said, you don't necessarily have to, when you're going to and confronting a fugitive, or there's a confrontational situation, you don't have to necessarily go in the order 1, 2, 3, 4. You can go, hey, put your hands up, do it now. And then if the situation dictates, and that's the minimum force necessary to neutralize the situation, then if put your hands up, do it now, or I'm going to release my dog. You skipped 2 and 3 and went straight to 4. Okay. Again, if that's the minimum force necessary to neutralize the situation, then that's okay. But to do that, you better be in the right. And to be in the right, that's where you have to know the state statutes that govern this. Now, I'm going to pause for a quick second because this is Colorado, and I want to touch on Kansas first. It's a little easier to explain the Kansas statutes versus the Colorado statutes. They're quite lengthy and very detailed. And I don't think we have the necessarily time for this because I'm about to hit my time limit right now. But let me pause real quick, and then we'll come back and talk about the Kansas statutes real quick. Okay, here, we're back now. Okay, so this is the Kansas statutes. I'm going to be real quick because we're about almost at the 15-minute mark, and looks like we might go over just a little bit, or there might be a part 3 to this video. But here is the Kansas statutes for the use of force, okay? And as you can see, this is crimes and punishments, general provisions, and principles of criminal liability. So the first, KSA 21-3211, use of force in defense of a person. A person is justified in the use of force against an aggressor when and to the extent it appears to him and he reasonably believes, okay, that's the key word there, reasonably believes that such conduct is necessary to defend himself or another against such aggressor's imminent use of unlawful force. Okay, so this is the statute that gives you the right to protect yourself against another who is trying to use unlawful force against you or another individual. Nowhere in that statute does it say that, hey, I can shoot somebody just because they're not complying with my verbal commands and putting their hands in the air. Nowhere in there does it say that, hey, I can shoot somebody because I think they were going to draw a weapon, although I didn't see one. I thought they were. Nowhere in there does it say that. So I think we need to, practice, drill, and rehearse and get back to some of the basics here as far as what justifies the use of force in defense of a person. Okay, and as you can see, the next one, 21-3212, use of force in defense of a dwelling. A person is justified in the use of force against another when and to the extent that it appears to him and he reasonably believes, that key word is reasonably believes, okay, that such conduct is necessary to prevent or terminate such other's lawful entry into or attack upon his dwelling. Nowhere in there does it say that, I often hear this, especially in Kansas and bounty hunters. Oh, if somebody's breaking into your house, you can shoot them and make sure you break the threshold and drag them across the threshold and you'll be justified. Well, that statute doesn't say that. And I would challenge to say that if you do that, you're probably going to be looking and calling yourself an attorney or calling a bail bondsman to get you out of jail. So I wouldn't go on that false belief or that rumor and myth that's out there. There's plenty of other statutes here. I'm over my time limit, so I'm going to wind this down. Now in Kansas, the reason why I like to show the statutes for Kansas, because Kansas is a open carry state and a concealed carry state, meaning that you can legally you put a gun on your hip and walk right down the street, and in theory, all right, nobody should mess with you. Now that said, looking the way that the skin tone that I have, I am probably not going to put a Glock on the side of my hip and then go walking down one of the busy streets here, and that's just because you can doesn't mean that you should. But we're also a concealed carry state, which means that you can legally conceal your weapon and carry it with you wherever you want to go. You don't have to have a permit to do that. Anybody can put a gun in their pocket and walk down the street. Doesn't matter. It's not anybody. You have to, be able to legally and lawfully own a gun. In other words, you can't have any felonies, and certain times restrictions do apply to that. You have to be 21 and older, so on and so forth. You have to be able to legally purchase the gun before you can actually go out there and legally conceal and carry a gun. But as you can see here, the statutes about force of an aggressor, defense of property other than a dwelling. And you can review those. You can review all those the statutes for Kansas on the Kansas State Statute website. You can check your state and review the statutes as well. If you have a hard time finding your state's statutes, feel free to give me a call. I'll be able to point you in the right direction. 800-320-1357. And we can help you locate the statutes for your state. Also, let me put out my quick little disclaimer here. By doing this video and talking about the lawful use of force, I am not saying that anybody can go out here and just put their hands on somebody else and say, well, I saw it on a video, so it's okay. That's not what I'm saying. You still need to be trained. You should go through some kind of formal training and certification before you can do this. What I am saying is, understand those levels of force, okay? The verbal force, physical force, stun guns and pepper spray, canines, and then deadly force. Okay, you need to understand those different levels of force before you attempt to apprehend somebody, and then when to apply which level of force. And whichever level of force you use, that needs to be the minimum force to neutralize the situation. Okay, you always use the minimum force necessary to neutralize the situation. I'm going to end this here. Like I said, we'll probably I'll try to get a part 3 of this to continue on. Let me know your thoughts and comments about this, though. What's your take on the use of force? Do you see in the media, or are we seeing law enforcement and others using the levels of force in the right way? Give me your comments on that. And if you like this video, hit a like. And let me know your thoughts on it as well, or what else you'd like to see me talk about in regards to the use of force and making arrests and apprehensions. Until next time, we'll talk to you later.